Hello everyone, I'm Carlos Sosa. I'm the technician here at Mullen Testers. What I just performed was a calibration of an Ashcroft gauge. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the gauge on the tester. This is a problem that a lot of people have because when they do it, they let air into the system, they call, they say they have low readings, they're having trouble, this and that. So I'm just going to show them the proper procedure on how to install your gauge on your Mullen tester. When you first put it on your gauges, and I just rebuilt this tester. So when I rebuild the testers, I leave the diaphragm level a little higher because I know that I'm going to have to push some of the glycerin out in order to bleed the gauges. So on a normal Mullen tester, you don't want your diaphragm protruding through the cylinder like this because then you're going to be getting high readings. What I usually like to do is I take a scale. Once I'm done, I'll show you after. I usually take a scale and I run the scale across the top of it, and if you hit the diaphragm, you have a little too much fluid. So obviously you can see that I'm hitting the diaphragm, but that's because I'm about to bleed the gauge. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the tripod back on. All right, so the tripod's on. So now what I do is I push down on the diaphragm until a little bit of the glycerin starts to come out of the gauge connector up here. So I'm looking and I kind of let the bubbles go, and then I catch some of it like that, and I tilt it back in like this, and I just start spinning. As I'm also still pushing down to keep a little bit of glycerin going up into the tube so no air gets trapped in there. So I usually just go about hand tight. So right there, that's about hand tight, and then I usually just give it a half a turn, or you know, if you feel, a lot of people tend to over crank their gauges. I find you don't need to do that. They're not going to leak as long as you go hand tight, and probably that's about it. That's about all you need right there. Okay, so that's about all you need. So now this gauge is on there, it's nicely zeroed out, everything looks good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bleed this gauge. This size code 0 to 200. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a test specimen, which I usually use a piece of cardboard, some paper, anything you've got laying around the shop. My favorite thing I like to use is a scratch ticket. For some reason they're good consistency with the cardboard. I usually take a scratch ticket, obviously a losing scratch ticket, fold it in half. I place it in the cylinder, clamp down the yoke, clamp down the tripod. Right there, you don't want to see the needle move. If the needle moves, you have too much fluid in there, which right now isn't a problem because you want a little extra fluid in there because you're going to be bleeding the gauge. So right now you want to run the gauge up to about half. Okay, so that's 100. So if you have trouble getting it to stay at half, you could flip your reverse stop latch. So I'll show you how to do that. Put it back, the needle's going to go down. You flip your reverse stop latch down. You run it up till you see about 100, and then you just stop it. Now you wait a few seconds, you let it settle, grab a rag, put a rag down there. So right now you have your cardboard or your subject in there in the cylinder under the tripod, nicely clamped down. You run the gauge up to about half its pressure, you let it set, and then you take a 3/8 wrench, you take the bleeder off, you let it bleed out for a few seconds. See how it's coming out, and then you put the bleeder back on. There was no bubbles in there because I just freshly calibrated and everything's good. Sometimes you're going to get bubbles. You want to let it run until the bubbles run out, and then you just put this back on. I know that was kind of quick, sorry, but like I don't want to lose too much fluid because this unit does not have a fluid injector. What a fluid injector does is it makes your life a lot easier. I'm trying to see if I have one on hand. This is a fluid injector. It's not completely built. I'm missing some parts, but fluid injector goes in here, and when you run out of fluid from bleeding your gauges, it allows you to just add the fluid in like that without opening up any of the valves and introducing air back into the system. So fluid injectors are very, very helpful. That's another accessory that we sell here at Mullen Testers. So once you do that, now you should be able to go ahead and do a burst. I'm kind of nervous with this because it might be about 180, so I'm pushing the limits of the gauge. So let me see where we're at on the actual test now. Oh, right there, 180, just like I knew. A folded scratch ticket's usually going to give you about 180 psi, and that's good. All right. So once again, I'm going to try another one. I did a test on there. It was really well. It went well, so I'm going to put another one in there just to test on the low side. This should be anywhere from around 60 to 80 psi. So if you want to watch the gauge right here, you can watch the gauge. You saw the test subject went in. My needle did not move. Now I'm going to push the tester to the start position to start the test. You want to make sure that the needle starts moving almost simultaneously as you put the tester into the start position. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in the start position and count 1 1000, 2 1000 to see how fast it moves. If it's 1 1000 and you get to 2 1000, you might want to add a couple drops of fluid, but if it starts moving simultaneously, you're good to go. So here we go, start position, and it's pretty good. And we're right around 110 psi, nice burst, nice solid pop. I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave this where it is and call this one a success and ship it back to the customer. Like I said, this one's a 1964 model C60 repair with a 2-gauge manifold. Should have a fluid injector, but that's the customer's discretion. And she looks good, all done up. Going back to the customer for another 50 years of service. Thank you once again. Mullen Testers, Standex Engraving Group, www.mullentesters.com. Accessories, gauges, fluid injectors, 2-gauge manifolds, testers, whatever you need, go on the website, find it, put your order in, and I hope to have you as a customer here at Mullen Testers. Thank you.